I hope you're having a good day today. This will be a tricky one to do. I believe it's about time for this video to be done. To share some things that are not so easy to share, but yeah. We'll call this video family, I think, because it's a pretty appropriate name for this video. Yeah, so okay. I was born in 1969. My mother and father had already had a child. My brother was, I think, about 8 months older than me. Not very much at all. This caused something to happen that would have a massive effect on my life. That when my mother realised she was pregnant with me, she rejected the child that was inside of her. Of course, she had only just had a child, and she was straight away pregnant again fairly quickly. Of course, in those days, contraceptives weren't used to such a degree as they are now. So the chances you could fall pregnant very, very soon after having a child was quite high, and that happened in that situation. So she rejected the whole situation about having another child so soon, but she ended up rejecting me even before I was even born. When she first realised I'd been conceived, and that continued, and the spirit of rejection was therefore upon me, and that followed me in life for so many years until probably about 6 or 7 years ago. See, I was born premature. My nasal area hadn't fully developed when I was born. It never did. While I was in hospital, I was in, what's it called, the area where, because I was born massively premature, so I had to be in hospital for quite a while. While I was there, my mother was having an affair with a man that she then got married to after. So, of course, I myself have often wondered, how on earth can you be doing that? You've just had a child, but again, if she rejected me when I was first conceived, then it's understandable how she didn't really care about this child she just had. So therefore, she was capable of doing that when her child was in hospital. That was her situation at the time. Well, then, after I was born, so there was my brother Paul, myself, and then my sister was born, Kelly. She was born a few years later. My parents were still together for all this time, even though my mother was pretty much seeing someone else for all the way through. But Kelly is of the blood of my mother and dad. I call him dad because he's never been a father, so mother is about right. And father and dad, yes. Sorry. Well, shortly after Kelly's birth, they divorced. I was around 4 years old, so Kelly would have probably been about 1 or 2 at the time. And there was always a question as to whether Paul was my dad's child or this other man's child. Don't know. I don't think it really matters particularly. He's been brought up by the other man, so he's the other man's child anyway. So I was, as I said, about 4 years old at this time, and so us as a children would spend some time with mother, with mum, sometimes with dad, and apparently, from what I've been told, obviously I was not aware of this at the time, I don't remember it. When I was with him, I'd cry to be with her. When I was with her, I'd cry to be with him. So I was that difficult child, apparently. So I was the only one of the three put into care. So around 4 years old, I was put into care, and I went through all that system from 4 years old to 18 years old, being in children's homes, boarding schools, foster parents, and foster parents. Ugh, I tell you, these people, they need to repent. That is a certainty. There was people I was fostered by who were doing it purely for money, and that they had their own child, but whenever their child did something, the foster kids would always get the blame for it and get the beating for what their child had done. It's like, oh, it was nasty. It was really nasty. In children's homes, oh my God. Some of these places were awful, absolutely terrible. There was one called Patricksbourne Children's Home in Patricksbourne Avenue in Gillingham in Kent. And that's in England. And yeah, that place was quite atrocious. It was run by people that, again, they didn't seem to have a caring bone in their body. It was actually quite funny in a way. We weren't allowed to leave the dining room at all, dining room table, until we'd eaten all our food. There was certain food that we never used to like. Broad beans were one of them. And so I used to put all the broad beans in my mouth and then ask to be excused to go to the toilet and spit them all down the toilet. Because I couldn't eat them. They were absolutely disgusting to me. But we used to have to have little tricks like that. Yeah, so it was when I was there that I was first. You could consider it to be, well, I was certainly emotionally abused there, mentally abused there, physically abused there, and sexually abused in that place. I broke my leg as well there. I broke my leg. It wasn't through any physical abuse. It was just me being silly, as I was on a swing and standing up on a swing, swinging back and forwards, and someone waved to me, so I waved to them. I let go of one hand to wave to them. Then my trousers started falling down, so I let go of the other hand to pull my trousers up, and of course fell off and broke my leg. So yeah, I wouldn't advise anyone to do that. Try and swing back and forward, standing up on a swing with no hands. Yeah, you're going to fall off and you're going to hurt yourself. So, but that was also an interesting time when I went into hospital. Yeah, they took me into hospital in a taxi, not an ambulance, with a broken leg, called a taxi. So I went into hospital, and at that time, my brother was in the same hospital, was in the same ward, and my mother would walk past my bed every day to go and see him. That was a bit odd, to say the least. Yeah, I remember that. That was a bit odd for that to have happened, because obviously she would have known it was me. She's walking past this kid that looks like her child every day. I'm sure at some point she would have asked someone, who is that child? And then to be told, yeah, that's the name of the child. Oh, that's my child. But never to come and say hello or anything. It's a bit odd. When I was there, my auntie and uncle from my father's side started coming over and taking me out occasionally for the weekend. I didn't realise until years later that they were doing it purely as a way of kicking my dad in the teeth. Of course, this was my dad's sister, my auntie, and they were sort of very much in competition with each other. They didn't really get along, and they'd have to have digs at each other. So I was used as a pawn for that. So then after that place, I went to I went to live with. No, I went to a place called Portal House, which was a lovely. nice enough place. Then after that, I went to live with my auntie and uncle for a short time. Then I spent a year in a normal school because, of course, I hadn't been in a normal school because I've been in all these children's homes. So the normal school was interesting, to say the least. I was the oldest kid there because I've been held back a year. But as I say, it was interesting. Interesting with the teachers because my writing was quite big, so they told me to write smaller, and I write as small as I could. Then the teacher in front of the class said, "Will you stop taking the piss? I should have write that small." So, excuse me. I was what, 10, 11 at the time? Um, yeah, so there were some funny situations like that in that school. But then, of course, I expected to probably stay in that situation, living with my auntie and uncle and their two daughters, and then going to a school. Um, but no, I was then moved into a boarding school in Wiltshire, which was well away from where my auntie and uncle lived. I still went to them during the holidays, but this was a living boarding school. And it was a boarding school really for kids that apparently other schools wouldn't take because they had behavioural problems. And one second, what have I skipped? Yeah, I skipped. Okay. When I think it was when the Portal House place ended when I left there. My auntie and uncle had booked a holiday for them and their two daughters during the summer holidays, so I was put into a children's home for a few days. This was when it was my birthday, but it's also the day that Charles and Di got married, or the day after. I think Charles and Di got married the day after that. Um, at that place, I was abused on that night for the second time by my auntie and uncle, who supposedly loved me as one of theirs, had taken their two daughters on a lovely holiday and dumped me in this children's home. Again, auntie and uncle really do need to repent, but I don't think they're going to. Um, I had a lot of time speaking to my auntie in the last few years. Well, this was about 4 or 5 years ago, and she still had the same negative, nasty attitude, but this time towards her grandchild, saying that her grandchild was pretty much the way I was as a child, being really naughty, really out of order. And so she hadn't learned a thing, so I don't think she's likely to have repented, in which case it doesn't matter. When I think of the situation, she's condemned herself to an eternity in hell, and I'm sorry for that. Nobody deserves that, and nobody should go through that. But if they don't repent, that's up to them. I tried to hold her accountable. She didn't want to be held accountable. But yeah, so that was that. I then went to this place in Wiltshire, which was nice to a certain degree. I mean, the staff occasionally were a bit aggressive. I remember when I first went there, it was only to visit the place and to check it out, etc., etc. Although I don't see why, because I had no say as to whether I'd go there or not. So who was checking who out, I don't know. But after that, I did that for a couple of days, went back home to my auntie and uncle. Then I was told I was going there properly. So when I went there properly, after a few days of being there, they did a practice fire alarm. So I was walking down the corridor, I started tapping on the wall. Next thing I knew, one of the members of staff ran behind me and kneed me in the back. Member of staff. Because I was tapping on the wall. He had found that annoying and decided to basically poleaxe me on the floor. That sort of thing happened occasionally at that place. Um, that place has been closed down now. But then again, that was years ago. Would have been different staff. yeah. So that was that. Then a member of staff accused me of rupturing his stomach because he had told me in front of other children that my auntie and uncle put me back into care, that they never wanted me. Now, I hit him in the stomach, but apparently I ruptured his stomach even though I was 14, quite slim, no more than 8 stone, in weight. Really, really lightweight, very skinny, played a lot of sport, but not really strong. I saw him years later when I went to visit the place, and his stomach was absolutely fine. I was eventually removed from that place to another place, and as I say, I'd even seen that bloke after that, and he was walking around fine. If he'd had a ruptured stomach, he would have been out for a long time. So, but what he told me was true. It was just a case he shouldn't really have said that in front of all the children, because yeah, that was a nasty bit, and that was said as a way of being nasty. So I don't necessarily regret hitting him. I didn't rupture his stomach, but I was like 14, so I was like, oh well, yeah, it happened. Yeah, and so yeah, and then it just continued. Like I say, I had the rejection issue, and the way that worked was every time you get close to someone, you would then lose them. They would then go to someone and say whether you were rejected or not, you felt rejected, and that just continued to happen. So with my auntie and uncle doing what they were doing, which was continually undermining anything I was trying to do, and it'd always be a case that I'd try and get a job, and I'd go and see them and say, "Oh, I've got this job interview coming up," and the response would always be, "Why on earth would they want you?" That sort of thing. And it's like, well, you make an interesting point. Why on earth would they want anybody? That that would be my response. Why on earth would they want anybody? But to a certain degree, what they were doing was getting through, and I didn't actually get another job for I think at least 15 years after that. So that was my family. My family were very dysfunctional, especially towards me. Um, my grandmother on my father's side was lovely. She was a church-going woman, and she was the only one that sort of accepted me for who I was. And when she died, that was a big loss. I felt that. When she actually died, I wasn't told that she had died. I just felt. I felt her go, even though I wasn't anywhere near the hospital she was in, or the hospice she was in. But I knew she had gone. At the very moment she went, I knew it. I felt it. She was a lovely lady. She really, really was. And hopefully I can be as loving and as kind as she was. But as I say, that was my worldly family. Incredibly dysfunctional. My father, or dad, should I say, my dad, remarried shortly after my parents divorced, and his new wife, gave him an ultimatum. Because of the fact of obviously his kids were coming over, and if I was the one being all upset and crying all the time, she eventually gave me the ultimatum: it's me or your kids. Apparently, I mean, she's never told me that. It's the case of my auntie told me that. But for some reason, my dad stopped seeing his kids, stopped bothering with them, stopped seeing them as his children. Settled down with this lady, had a child with her, and as I say, didn't really bother with his children at all. I mean, I even had a conversation with him, and he said to me that he only has one son, and that's this other kid. Even though he's actually got potentially two other sons and a daughter. We only considered that he only had one child. And so, again, he has to repent, and he's still alive, so I hope he does. He's got every chance of repenting. I don't hold anything against any of these people. My auntie, my uncle, my mum, my dad. They were in their situations. They made the decisions that they made, and that's between them and God. Yeah, I'm not going to ask God to forgive them because that's up to God to do that, and it's up to them to ask God to do that. They've got to repent, and but I don't hold a grudge. I don't hold anything against them. Um, I've forgiven them from my point of view, especially as I say, with regards to my dad. He was a young man at the time, and being with a woman who was, by all accounts, having an affair while she was with him. Obviously, it would be painful for him to even see his children because there was always a potential that this other man was the father of those children. And so that would have been difficult. So when seeing the children became a problem with his new relationship, but then he made the decision that is an understandable decision to make. Was it the right one? Yeah, it was. I mean, you look at it from the point of view that I've had the experiences and the situations that have happened to me because they were supposed to happen. Right? These things had to happen for me to become me, the me I am today. So, yeah, it's ridiculously stupid and a waste of flipping time in thinking, oh, but if only this had happened, oh, but if only that had happened, things could have been really different. Well, they didn't happen. What happened, happened. You just have to get on with it. Yeah, your past is your past. You can't go and change it. You can't change what's happened to you no more than you can change what you've done. You just need to learn from it, get up, and move forward. And if you fall down, get up and move forward. Learn from it, move on. As best you can. I mean, things like depression, they can come in, and yeah, the last couple of years has been tough because it wasn't until about 4 years ago that God told me that since childhood I've been fighting depression. Now, the problem was, as soon as God told me that since childhood I've been fighting depression, I had to accept that there was an issue of depression. But as soon as you accept such a thing, it comes in like a flipping flood, where it was not even that noticeable to me before. Suddenly, bang, depression really comes in, and you're like, my God, what the bloody hell was going on? You know, things went from tough to absolutely awful in a matter of days after I was told that, and it continued that way for well over a year. Yeah, it was hard work. I mean, it's to the point where I would often say to God, Lord, I'm not sure if I can continue as a Christian. Because if this is what being a Christian is, you know, having to fight and fight and fight and fight and fight just to hold on, what's the blinking point? You know? But I got through it. So it was tough, but I got through it. So that's cool. Oh, dear. But then you look at it from the point of view that I became a Christian. And as soon as I became a Christian, that family in the past is no longer my family because I was born again. But it's sod's law that when I become a Christian, I become a Christian at a time when Christians, my Christian family, is probably more dysfunctional than it ever has been before. Great, thumbs up to that. Right, and you know, I've had friends, the friend in New Zealand, who because of the fact that normally with people who I'm friends with, I'm pretty transparent. If I'm having a tough day, I will let them know that. I will say, yeah, not a good day today, struggling with this, struggling with that, blah, blah. Because generally speaking, if I'm speaking to a Christian, they can pray, right? Whereas what this chap said, Rob, is that there are loads of people that I know of that he knows of, but this is him saying it. There are loads of people that I know of that want to be there for you, but you're too difficult for them at the moment. So they're not being there for you. And it's like, did he even hear himself speak? Because what he's saying is, when you really need that support, these people won't be there for you. But once you get everything sorted out, they will happily be there for you. And I replied to him, go and tell these people that I don't want them to be there for me at all. If they can't be there for me when things are difficult for me, then I certainly don't want them anywhere near me when things are good, because they've not earned the right to be. He didn't understand that. He did not understand that in any way, shape, or form. But I know there are people listening who would understand that. But yeah, Christian family is difficult, and part of the reason why I can get annoyed is that my last video I did, I got a bit heated about people making, not being reverent in church and coming into church and talking to everyone as if, oh, it's the only chance we've got that we can possibly find out how things are going with you this week. That I got annoyed about that and said that these people shouldn't really be anywhere near church, and church would be a far better place without them anywhere near it. It's because of the fact that I know that there are a lot of people in church who are struggling and who are suffering and who really do need God to move. And yet, we're in a situation where the church is pretty much occupied by churchgoers and not by spirit-filled born-again Christians. And they are seriously getting in the way of God moving. And so I look at it from the point of view and saying, well, okay, our society is in a mess. We have people who are struggling for hope, and the church is pretty much silent, pretty much keeping Christianity in-house right now, because they're playing church. And of course, that to me is utterly and totally unacceptable. I mean, yeah, to a certain degree, it is a bit of a situation where I say, for goodness sake, God, come on. You didn't just give me a dysfunctional human family, worldly family. You give me a dysfunctional Christian family as well to deal with. Wonderful, that is. Yeah, I'm experiencing dealing with dysfunctional, but I'm not exactly experiencing dealing with it well, because with my family, I don't have a relationship with them. I don't. Not really. I mean, my dad's son. I speak to him occasionally on Facebook, but his attitude is, I'm just somebody. He doesn't really see me as a brother. So, okay, you don't want to make a relationship like that? Okay, that's fine. It doesn't bother me. Because you've not been part of my life for all those years, so it's not exactly something I'm going to miss, is it really? I reach out and I knock on the door, and the door doesn't open, so it's like, well, okay. That door didn't open, so I'm pretty much leaving it to close now. So that's the worldly family. The Christian family, again, I have to do that with people. I have to, if I knock on the door and it doesn't seem to open, or it seems to be closing, I just let it close. Just let it close. There's no point trying to force something to happen that really there's no desire on the other side to have it happen. And at the moment, deep Christian relationships are just not happening. People prefer shallow. That's not for me. That just isn't for me. It never has been. It never will be, because we have one life, we have one family now, because, as I say, when I was born again, the Christian family is now my family. That's it. That's my only family now. That's the family that I should be having relationships with. But I'm not, because at the moment they are just as dysfunctional as my human family. So it's like, you've got to just try and manage things as they are, and that's not easy. Trying to keep your head above water, trying to have any degree of accountability as a Christian with just yourself. But that's not easy at all. Not in any way, shape, or form. That is incredibly difficult to have that. So it's like, right. Hopefully, we will get to the point soon enough when we can have those sort of relationships with people, when we can have that accountability, where we can have relationships where we build each other up. I've not seen anything like that available as yet, but it doesn't mean it can't be. I have to hope that one day that will be available, and we can all just say, well, okay, the past is the past. Let it go now. We've got something better now, so let's focus on that. Let's build that. Let's try and make sure that this continues, even when this move of God has died out, which it will do, not because of God, but because of man. Every move of God has died out. Never because God has said, right, that's enough. It's always because humans have got into it. And because humans get into it, they then muck it up. And I'm not sure if we can stop that from happening. But if we can't, we need to make sure that the good things that come from it stay. That once family starts getting healthier and starts getting better, we need to try and make sure it stays that way. Because we have a job to do. We've been left here to do a job. Simple. When we gave our lives to God, we belonged in heaven. We didn't belong on earth anymore, we belonged in heaven. But we were left on earth to do a job, to become vessels for Him. Now, as I say, as I've always said, when we look at ourselves, can we honestly say that we are pleased with how things have gone, with who we are? Are we really vessels that God can use? Have we made ourselves that? Have we allowed God to make us that? No. And the truth of the matter, we haven't done any of that at all. We've been really, really poor. But hopefully we're coming to a time when God can be right at the centre of everything. And where we can live according to the way that God has called us to live, and be an example to the world, and allow our light to shine. As a family, be a united family. Be a family that is joined in love, accepting that we have differences, but that doesn't matter. And that's the point, I think, if you take all the churchgoers out of the church and just leave the spirit-filled born-again Christians, you'll find the differences between us are incredibly minimal. It's the churchgoers that make the differences between us, churches-wise, look to be so extreme. The spirit-filled ones don't, because they just say, okay, God's saying do, we need to do that. If they're all doing the same, they're not looking at the religion in your church and saying, that's brilliant, this is from God, this is the way we need to do things. That's a churchgoer who's doing that. So, God willing, most of the churchgoers can be converted to spirit-filled, born-again Christians. But the ones that can't need to be moved out of the way, because they've been in the way far too long. And it hurts my soul and my spirit to see all this going on, because there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of suffering, there's a lot of struggling going on out there, not just out in the world, but also in the church. And we need to get right. We need to get all this stuff sorted out. It's like the baggage from a life like the one that I had before as a Christian. You're obviously going to come into Christianity with a ton of baggage because of that. Obviously. Now, as a brand new Christian, all that baggage should have been dealt with within the first 6 months. Because church should have been functioning in that way to deal with all that baggage, so I didn't have to carry it around with me for the next 30, 40 flipping years. But church hasn't focused in that way, so that you've got people that are still carrying the same baggage as they were when they first became a Christian. And that should never have happened. And that's an absolute disgrace from the point of view of church, that people are still carrying around that sort of baggage. It's crazy. How on earth was that stuff not dealt with? I mean, I get annoyed when I go to a church and they talk about, we've got a new alpha group starting. I'm like, excuse me? You're still doing alpha? 20, 30 years of alpha and you haven't moved forward from alpha. That's it. You're still doing that. Wow. I mean, it's better than nothing, but come on. Come on. If we still had the same mobile phones that we had 30 years ago and things haven't moved forward, I'm sure people would be shouting and screaming and saying, how comes technology hasn't moved forward? But the church doesn't move forward. Church is still doing what it was doing 30 years ago and being proud of it. So, what? If that's happening in any area of the world, that things haven't moved forward in 30 years, then there'd be an uproar. That business would have collapsed by now. I tell you, church, you've got to start moving forward. We've got to say, right, let's basically reset the button. Get rid of all the religion, get rid of all the tradition, get rid of all the ways in church. Get rid of the whole lot. Tell your pastor you've got to reapply for your position. Anyone else in the area who believes they should be doing that job can apply. Anyone in your church can apply. Because it's quite likely that the leader of your church isn't the person who should be leading your church, and it's quite possible that the person who should be leading your church is in your church, not leading it. So scrap it all. Say, right, let's start again, clean slate. Now, what does God want to do here? Who does God want in charge? Who does God want in charge of the pastoral care? Who does God want in charge of admin? Who does God want in charge of prayer? Who does God want in charge of ministry? Healing, or etc., etc., etc. Then do that. What does God want to do in this service? Does he want 4 songs? Does he want the whole hour of songs? Does he want 10 hours of worship? Does he want a whole day of prayer? But you do that. Once you get to the point where you can do things as God wants and you can do what God wants you to do, you're going to have God moving in the church in marvelous ways. But if it keeps on being about what man wants and man's way, and really, but we can only have church that way because people have got lives to live. Excuse me? People have got lives to live? These same people have given their lives to God. They've got lives to live. No, they haven't. They gave their lives to God. Their lives are not theirs to live. Their lives belong to God. And you live them how He tells you to live them. That's the flipping point of being a Christian. You're giving your life to God. As I said in the other one, that includes your body. So if your life includes your body, includes your time, includes your children, includes your partner, includes every flipping thing in your life belongs to God, then you have no excuses whatsoever to not do things God's way. What you have is a load of BS that's been put in place by the church as an excuse for, we have to run according to the lowest denominator in our church. Yeah, the weakest person is the level to which we run it. Oh my Lord. And we're massively surprised that God never moves in our church. Let's take away all of the things that were stopping God from moving. And let's just see God moving. Now, I know it's scary. For goodness sake, I've never been in a situation like that. So therefore, yeah, it's flipping scary. I mean, the most scary thing is you could be there and nothing happens. But is that? I mean, the most scary thing could be you're there and everything flipping happens. And you feel, oh my, I've got to keep this up. Well, excuse me, you don't have to keep it up. God will keep it up if he plans to, if he wants to do that. And he will do it because it glorifies his name. And that's the whole point. The name of God is to be glorified in the world so that people come to him, so that their lives can be saved. That's the whole point, so that their lives can be saved, so that they can have hope, so they can have some form of direction in their life, so they can give their lives to God, and God can lead them and guide them into a better way of living for them, into a way where they can thrive rather than just survive or fight to survive, which is what most people are doing. They're barely surviving. Even in church, people are barely surviving. You've got churches that are on spiritual life support machines. And many Christians in those churches are on the same flipping machines. That's man-made. It's not God-made. God didn't make it to be that way. That's how man has made it. So we've got to get man pretty much out of the design of church. So no, go away. All this idea that they've been having for the past 20 years, get rid of the whole lot. All this point that you can only lead if you've been trained in a Bible college. No. Let's get rid of the Bible colleges. Let's teach people to be trained by God for all areas of ministry. Let's start doing things his way, and we are going to see God moving in incredible ways if we do that. With regards to family, yeah, that's our family now. That Christian family, those dysfunctional people in church, they are our family. And the problem is, in churches, quite often you can't even recognise which ones are your families, because it's very difficult to recognise the ones that are spirit-filled. The ones that aren't spirit-filled are not your family, because they're not saved. They're just churchgoers. And churchgoers are not your family. They're not part of your family. They're part of the world. But recognising your family amongst that is very difficult. So quite often we get into relationships with people that are wrong for us completely, because we're not being guided by God. But we just see that they're in church, so they must be part of our family. No. I mean, how people haven't figured that out yet. They're trying to be too kind. They're trying to be too nice to people. You've got to understand. No, be truthful. See it as it is. Allow light to be shined on the situations. You can recognise it as it is. That's the best way to move forward. You've got to realise there's a problem before you can fix it. So see the problem and then try and address it. Try and deal with it. Well, it's a bit earlier today doing this one. It's now nearly 5:20 on the 2nd and the 3rd, 2020. 2nd of March, therefore. Okay. My brain is starting to go a bit dodgy. Once I get tired during the day because of these sleep problems, and whether that's physical, whether that's mental, I don't know. That's another thing. My driving license was revoked because of the fact the GP in the past has said that I have sleep apnea symptoms. And I had to tell the driving license people that, and so they revoked my license because I missed a medical that they wanted me to do. And I had that medical, and it was the most stupid thing you would ever possibly go through. Basically, the point in the medical was saying, from 0 to 5, how likely is it you just fall asleep while watching TV, or while doing this, or while doing that, while cooking, or while whatever? The answer is 0. No, I've never just fallen asleep. I get blinking tired, in which case I have to have coffee to wake up. I wake up many, many times during the night, which leaves me tired. Now, whether that's physically related due to the nasal problems I've got from birth, or whether it's mentally related due to depression or whatever, I don't know. I don't know if I still have depression. I know I react to things quite strongly at times. Again, that's a case of trying to fight. But I know that we're supposed to let God fight for us, and we're supposed to be still, just letting God fight our battles for us. I'm not being great at that so far. Hopefully I will be better. I'm learning. So that's something we should always do, is learn. There's a lot of learning to do, so this has been a long one, 46 minutes, my goodness me. But good luck listening to all of this. If you've managed it, well done. God bless you. And this may be the only one today, I'm not sure. If there's something else that God puts on my mind. Been on my mind for a few days to do this one, so I felt I should do it. So God bless you. Speak to you soon. Have a wonderful week, because today is Monday, so whether you've got to have a wonderful week, have a wonderful week, and be blessed. And be patient, folks. God's going to move, and things are going to improve. Just hold on and try and use that time till it happens to be known to be led by the Holy Spirit, so that when it happens you can thrive. Maybe you can thrive before that. Maybe you can be one of the people that's the instigator in things becoming better. Well, God bless. I'll speak to you soon.